Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy, Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, we're going through the news. We've got a few stories to talk about today, and most of them are revolving around some contract updates, whether it be Tua Tagovailoa, Amari Cooper, Brandon Aiyuk, and then we've got some other players to talk about as well. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And good morning to everyone popping in this morning. If you're tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, thank you very much. And if you're listening on the podcast, again, you can find the Wake and Take podcast via link in the description. Thank you as well for listening. Good morning to you, MV Professor. Good morning, guys. We have an update on yesterday's episode. Yesterday, we talked pretty much only about Brandon Aiyuk and that he had a meeting Monday with the San Francisco 49ers and that it seemed that, he probably wasn't going to get traded anymore, at least according to Brandon Aiyuk's Instagram comment saying, I thought the 49ers weren't going to trade me or something, right? There was a whole hullabaloo of stuff going on. There was like Jaden Daniels was showing up to ESPN with Brandon Aiyuk. Either way, the meeting that was discussed happened. And one thing I mentioned yesterday is that we don't really know how that meeting went for the most part. But since that episode, Tom Pelissero, NFL Network's insider, has come out and said that it was a good meeting. This is the full quote. Wideout Brandon Aiyuk requested a meeting Monday with the 49ers brass, and it was characterized as a good one in which both sides agreed to keep working towards an extension. On Wednesday, Pelissero said he would anticipate all parties involved would take some time to enjoy the 4th of July holiday before resuming their work at hammering out a long-term pact. So, two things here. Well, it seems that they are going to wait at least a couple weeks before signing a contract extension or working on it, coming to agreements. Secondly, why are we waiting until 4th of July to sign this? We've got 2 weeks until a week until 4th of July, like a week and a half. Like, you don't need to take that long to figure this out. Like, you can just take the 4th of July weekend to figure this out, right? Or to take a break. Like, it's June 27th. We're not even in July yet, and you're talking about July 4th. What is that about? But whatever. Brandon Aiyuk, it seems, and the 49ers, they both want to be there. As we know yesterday, Brandon Aiyuk said that he wants to be with the San Francisco 49ers and that there's just some disagreement on the contract. We know that Brandon Aiyuk, at least we assume based on reports, that he was offered a $26 million a year contract that would make him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league. But Brandon Aiyuk does not feel that that's worth enough, or there's maybe something within that contract that maybe the guarantees aren't high enough. But either way, that particular offer to Brandon Aiyuk was not enough. So we'll see how this develops. But either way, as you guys know, my take here is that I do think eventually Brandon Aiyuk will sign an extension or just play out this 5th-year option and play on a franchise tag next year for about $30 million, which is, if that's what he wants is the money, then there you go. With Deebo Samuel probably moving on from the 49ers next season. But, there's still a world where the Commanders offer the 49ers a big enough trade package to where Brandon Aiyuk goes there. But I still think the most likely outcome is that he signs this extension. They come to an agreement of some sorts, I guess, after 4th of July, which, again, why is that the deadline? Like, it's summer. We already know Brandon Aiyuk isn't doing anything but relaxing, right? Or like causing drama. Like, he's been going out, TikToking, talking with Jaden Daniels and all this stuff. Like, we know he's relaxing right now. Don't try to convince us otherwise, Brandon. But either way, that's where we're at. We'll find out, I guess, in a few weeks what's going on here. But again, the Jason opinion as of right now is that Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to sign an extension at some point. Next contract dispute will be quick with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, as we know, sat out from the mini camps, and it was really just to get paid. Amari Cooper is on the final year of his contract, and he's 30 years old. But, he hasn't really shown any signs of slowing down. So Amari Cooper wants to go ahead and figure out a way to give himself either an extension, more guaranteed money, probably an extension, right? Like, that's what he's after here. Whether and the money, I don't think is really the issue given he's 30 years old. I think the issue here is the fact that he's on the last year of his contract and he feels he has a couple more seasons in him and he wants to know where those seasons will be. I don't think this is a money thing. I really don't. He has a $23 million cap hit this year. So, yes, that is lower than some of these top wide receivers, but I'm sure Amari Cooper understands his age and still understands that, $20 million is a ton of money, especially since how he started in the league, at where the wide receiver market was at the point he entered it has just changed so rapidly. I'm sure that he is fine with his $20 million or so. The big question here is, can the Browns do it? Can the Browns do it, or is he just going to have to finish this year on the Browns and test the open market? And I think that's what Amari Cooper doesn't want to do. I think he, A, wants to stay fresh in case he has to do that. But B, I think he really just wants the contract extension from Cleveland. I think he wants to just have his career finished, right? He just wants to know where he's going to be, and I think he just wants the money. At least that's how I'm reading into this. With him just kind of talking about, I'm just trying to get paid. That's really all he said. He was asked by the betting company Better. I guess they were making like a TikTok or something, and they'd asked him to race, and he said, I would pull a hamstring trying to race you. I'm trying to get paid, is what he said. That's kind of what sparked this whole thing. And the Browns general manager, Andrew Berry, he actually came out and said that his absence from training camp does not change their affinity for Amari Cooper. So it sounds like the Browns want him as well. And I think it also just kind of lines up, right, with Deshaun Watson's contract. They still have him under contract for 2 more seasons. They kind of made their own bed with that. They can technically get out from him. I mean, we just saw it with Denver, right, where they just had to take a massive dead cap hit. That would be the case for Deshaun Watson, but it is just so unbelievably massive that they might have to rely on him those next 2 seasons. But I mean, I don't know. The Broncos went away from it. So I think if Deshaun Watson is bad, then they might move on. And I think that's probably another reason that there is a little bit of a hesitation with extending Amari Cooper. Yeah, they want him there, but there's no point extending a 30-year-old wide receiver if your quarterback sucks. And so I think they really more so want to see what's going on with Deshaun Watson before they really invest more money into Amari Cooper, because they've already, signed Jerry Jeudy to that contract, brought him in. And so are you really going to keep investing in this wide receiver core with an uncertain quarterback, a quarterback that you're paying way too much money, that has taken actually money off the table for you to even be able to extend Amari Cooper? That's probably the big holdup here, because if you look at the Browns cap numbers, they are under the cap this year. They have $12 million of money to play around. But over the next 2 seasons, they are over the cap. They have no money over the next 2 seasons, largely because they are on the books, Deshaun Watson, $64 million in both 2025 and 2026. That is $128 million going to Deshaun Watson over the next 2 seasons. So that's a lot of money tied up for their quarterback that they're not even sure in. So it makes sense that they might not want to extend Amari Cooper yet. And for Amari Cooper, yes, that sucks. It really does. It sounds like that Amari Cooper is going to just have to play through this season and test the open market next year, unless they come to terms on some, medium level contract, just a $20 million over the next 2 seasons type of deal. And I'm not sure that that's what Amari Cooper wants. So we could see a trade, but more than likely, I think that Amari Cooper is going to just play out this year's contract and not really get an extension. And that's how I would rank it. I'm going to say, we're going to do this. We're going to say the most likely possibility, according to my thinking, is that Amari Cooper that nothing changes here. He just plays out this year and has to test the open market next year. I'd say slightly less likely would be that they sign a, agreeable extension to where he stays in Cleveland. And then the least likely option is that he's traded. I do think that the Browns want Amari Cooper on the team this year, because this is a huge trial year for Deshaun Watson. If he still does not take a step forward, they are going to do whatever they can to get out from under Deshaun's contract, I assume. And I think that would start with cleaning house. And probably a big part of cleaning house would be a 31-year-old veteran wide receiver, Amari Cooper. So I don't think that an extension is likely. It's possible, but I think more than likely Amari Cooper is going to have to play through this contract that he's already signed and test the open market next year. Unless Deshaun Watson ends up being good. But as you guys know, I really do think that Deshaun Watson has lost it. It seems more of a head case than a talent issue. It just seems he can't get over some of the off the field stuff. He just seems way too in his head, seems to have lost tenacity and everything. So we'll see though. I mean, that when you're in your head, it does at some point go away or not, right? It's a snap of a finger if it does, but it's hard. It's very, very hard as an athlete to get out of those kind of those slumps, if you will. And I don't know if Deshaun Watson has it in him, which means I don't think that Amari Cooper is going to be a Cleveland Brown long term, but I do this season. So that's where I'm at with this situation. Hopefully that wasn't too all over the place, but I think at the end we kind of brought it together there. So Amari Cooper, still holding out, still looking for a contract extension, mostly because he's getting up there in age and, it's just uncertain about his future. And I think when you're at that point of your career, I think you just want to know where you're going to end up because, it's got to suck. I'm sure, I don't know. I'm sure he has a family or whatever living around Cleveland, and it would suck to just, you want to plan your movings and stuff like that. Like, I assume, right? So we'll see. We'll see where it goes with here. But again, he is holding out a little bit longer, trying to get that money. The next contract dispute revolves around Tua Tagovailoa, but I want to wait to that for the back of the show. We've got a couple more news things real quickly that we'll discuss before we talk about Tua. Austin Ekeler, as we know, I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, he had this quote about why he decided to leave the Chargers and request that trade and all that stuff, or not resign, whatever the why he isn't on the Chargers right now. He didn't want to be on the Chargers right now, he said, because he didn't want to have 300 carries in a season. Some people have taken that as, oh my gosh, Austin Ekeler doesn't want to be a bell cow anymore. He doesn't think he can handle volume anymore. When simply put, it is quite literally Austin Ekeler doesn't want to have 300 carries. He's fine having 300 receptions, guys. But Austin Ekeler has never been the type of running back to get a ton of carries and just hurt his body, especially at this point in his career. It makes no sense to use Austin Ekeler like that. So he made the right decision, as we've talked about, as I believe, to move on from the Chargers. And they're fine too. They've got Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and Kamani Vidal. That makes a lot more sense to their philosophy than an Austin Ekeler does. And it makes a lot more sense for an Austin Ekeler to go to a team that fits his philosophy well. The Washington Commanders fit that philosophy perfectly. This is what Austin Ekeler said to Tom Pelissero. This is apparently the Tom Pelissero episode. You're going to get the best version of myself always, no matter what. There's been this controversy out there like, oh, Austin said he doesn't want 300 carries because that's what the Chargers said. I've never had that many carries ever, so I don't know why everybody's in an uproar. It's not that I don't want to touch the ball. It's the way that I've had the most production is when I'm able to split between catching and running the ball. That is when I've been the most productive, down on the red zone, right out in the field when I can have both those types of environments. And now with Brian Robinson being in the backfield and my old head coach, Anthony Lynn, where I first got my start and first started finding success as my running backs coach, they're going to utilize us in that same type of way is what it's looking like. So I'm going to go right back to my roots of when I continue to have success and continue to build on that in the way that fits Austin Ekeler the most. A new team and system isn't hindering Ekeler's confidence entering his 8th NFL season. It begs the question, should fantasy owners be looking to select Ekeler in the first round this year, asked Tom Pelissero. Austin Ekeler said, yes, you should be drafting me in the first round. Let me ask you this. I guess it's a little tough because in the fantasy world, you're judged off your last season. But as far as consistency, when I've been healthy, yes, last year I missed like 4 games with a high ankle sprain, and I came back and sprained my other ankle. But when Austin Ekeler has been healthy on the field, he has produced. And so that's the same thing going forward here. If I'm healthy, I'm going to be on the field and I'm going to be producing. You've seen what it looks like when I produce, so you're going to want me on your team. Now, of course, I'm just going to go ahead and say, don't fucking draft Austin Ekeler in the first round. I can't believe that they even shoehorned that into the article, and I can't believe Tom Pelissero even asked that. You can just simply ask, should we be drafting you in fantasy football? You don't have to go so far to say that we need to be drafting him in the first round. But either way, I love the confidence from Austin Ekeler. As you guys know, I have already coined the Washington Commanders backfield as a great budget option. I really think Brian Robinson's going to get a ton of carries, and I think Austin Ekeler is going to get a ton of complimentary catches as well. I think that this will be a very complimentary backfield, and they're both very, very cheap options. And I know that it's player profiler and that we're not supposed to like Brian Robinson, but he has produced, he's had the volume, and he's going to just be the between the tackles grinder. That's going to be fine, getting the volume. And Austin Ekeler is going to come in on some of those passing work downs and catch probably a buttload of passes, as this is an air raid offense with Cliff Kingsbury coming out there. We've seen with Dan Quinn during his time in Atlanta, he used a platoon with Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman. We saw in Dallas even Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, right? I mean, granted, he was the defensive coordinator, but still, like his philosophies remain. And so I am expecting, and even in Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury, we had James Conner and Chase Edmonds, a successful season as well. So I think this is going to be a very nice backfield duo to target, to be completely honest with you. And just that. Not even like an injury contingent upside or anything like that. I think that Austin Ekeler is going to be really solid for PPR leagues. Solid, right? RB2, maybe flex. And same with Brian Robinson. RB2, maybe flex, a solid. option, right? At their value. I don't really see them outperforming their ADP too much, but I damn sure don't see them underperforming their ADP. And that's really what we're looking for in the range where those players are going in the draft. So I think it's going to be fine, especially since they have a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. They're going to rely on the run game a little bit. I'm sure that they're going to ask him to pass it off to the running back a little bit just to kind of get him acclimated to game speed. So I don't know. I think it's a nice budget backfield that I am going to be targeting. I have been targeting. I keep getting Brian Robinson. I don't feel great about it, but I feel good about it. Like he has a good value. Like you can get Brian Robinson after like Nick Chubb, which I think is ridiculous. So anyway, that is my take on Austin Ekeler and the Commanders backfield. I say if you can get him for a cheap enough price, which it seems to be where it's at, then I'm scooping them up, right? I mean, Austin Ekeler, we even saw last year with the injuries, he still had multiple 20-point games. He was still pretty efficient even when Justin Herbert was gone, and he was the only player on the field with both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams injured, right? And Justin Herbert. Like Austin Ekeler was the whole Chargers offense at the end of the season last year, and he was having the volume fine. Like he was doing fine, and he stayed healthy. It was just that defenses were able to lock onto him a little too much. But I still think he has a ton left in the – no, not a ton. He still has a little bit left in the tank, and he's still a very good pass-catching running back with a little bit of juice. So Austin Ekeler, a little bit of a value here. Uncle Ted says Kamani Vidal is the value. Yes. I mean, for the Chargers, yes. But Austin Ekeler is on the Commanders now. And so I think him and Brian Robinson are values. And I also think that, if anything, if you guys do not believe, here's a little bonus one. Here's a little bonus. If you guys do not believe that Austin Ekeler could stay healthy, they do have an undrafted free agent running back from the University of Arizona named Michael Wiley. I actually named him one of my honorable mention running backs from the Senior Bowl because of his pass catching prowess. I thought that Michael Wiley was actually a better pass catcher than Dylan Laub at the Senior Bowl among the running back groups. He was really, really elusive, very smooth hands, good route runner. So yeah, he's an undrafted free agent running back, but this is a pretty shallow running back backfield with Brian Robinson, Austin Ekeler, Chris Rodriguez has nothing. And then there's Michael Wiley, who does have some pass-catching juice. So I think it could be interesting if Austin Ekeler goes down. That's a very, very deep stash. But a fun one for you guys, my friends, the Wake and Take audience, Michael Wiley. A little bit of a fun pass-catching running back stash for Washington if you don't believe in Austin Ekeler. And the next bit of news before we get into Tua Tagovailoa is Anthony Richardson. And this is a quick one. Just around his health, Chris Ballard said that Anthony Richardson will be full go for training camp. And the full quote is, he was full go all the way up to the last day of OTAs, but we had 2 heavy throwing sessions the days before, so we just backed off a little bit on the last day. As you guys know, there was some controversy as they rested Anthony Richardson the last day of OTAs, and he talked about how his shoulder was sore and stuff, so people got a little bit worried. But, GM comes out saying it's going to be full go for training camp, that he actually was full go. This article even goes on to say that, just shoulder soreness is expected, even if you are healthy. Like, this is just an injury at the end of the day. And so, it's just saying to temper expectation not temper expectations, not fade him too much, like to just be, just understanding. Like, yeah, he's going to be playing through an injury a little bit, but by the time the season rolls around, he's probably going to be healthy. And also at the end of the day, he's an athlete that has played through injuries before. So it's probably fine. It just, again, begs just the issue that Anthony Richardson does, have the kind of aggressive play style. So that's more so where we're worried here, but hopefully he's worked on it a little bit, and, hopefully he just doesn't keep running into contact. Dan Webster says, I don't hate players. I hate their ADP unless it's Brian Robinson. And I keep pressing the button just because it's like, oh, do I take Brian Robinson or do I take Jalen Hyatt? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll take the starting running back for the Commanders, even if he doesn't have a ton of juice. I think this is a hot take here, I guess, not even on topic anymore, but I think that Brian Robinson might be the new Josh Jacobs. You've got the boring name, the not that athletic, the Alabama running back, the guy who just keeps getting volume, right? I don't know. I think it's a fun comparison, and we'll see. I think Brian Robinson, of course, is still going to be used. That's a backfield I think I'm targeting. But either way, Anthony Richardson is actually what we're talking about here. I still say take those swings on him, guys. If he stays healthy, he's going to be QB1. I have no doubt in my mind. Yes, that's the concern, but I think the upside is worth the risk because even if he gets hurt, he's still going to be quarterback. So like, when he comes back. And so if you have Anthony Richardson, which I highly recommend doing, I also highly recommend getting Joe Flacco. We saw what he did last year in Deshaun Watson's absence. We saw what Gardner Minshew did last year in Anthony Richardson's absence. Joe Flacco would probably be a very relevant fantasy quarterback if Anthony Richardson goes down. So I do think that this is one of those cases where it's okay to handcuff your quarterback with Joe Flacco, which is crazy. I know. But yeah, there it is. That's the Anthony Richardson stuff, which leads us to the final bit of news for today, Tua Tagovailoa. But before we get to that, I want to play an ad about the FFPC.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
Go sign up for the FFPC. Very fun format with some high stakes where you can make some money if you're good at fantasy football, so it's nice. I do recommend doing that. And get $25 off your first team with code UNDERWORLD. So guys, Tua Tagovailoa. About a month ago, like 3.5 weeks, so I'm rounding up here. But we had an article come out about Tua getting antsy over the contract situation. The full quote at the time was basically saying that he was kind of just dancing around everything. It was really weird. He was asked about the contract situation and how the quarterback market is changing. And he said, I just want to get something done. That's it. Just wanting to get something done. He was asked if he was concerned. He said, not concerned. Concern's not the right word. That's way off. And they said, well, how about antsy? He said, probably antsy, maybe, yeah. And he said, pissed off. And he said, I wouldn't say pissed off. That's the nature of the beast. That's how it goes, right? I mean, I'm not blind to people that are in my position that are getting paid. Am I concerned about it? I'm not. But there's discussions that we've had, and we're trying to move into the right direction where we can both be happy. Now, I'll tell you one thing. The market is the market. If we didn't have a market, then none of that would matter. It's just an organizational thing. Didn't matter if that guy got paid. That's because it's up to that organization. So that's what I would say. The market is the market. That's it. So at that time, we had a little bit of an episode about it. Tua Tagovailoa. At that time, it seemed that the Miami Dolphins were not wanting to extend Tua Tagovailoa to the extent that the Lions had with Jared Goff. They didn't want to make him one of the higher paid quarterbacks in the league, and that seemed to have frustrated Tua Tagovailoa. We talked about it in comparison to Jordan Love, how, he's also having these contract disputes, but he's actually being president and everything, and the Packers are talking very publicly about wanting to extend him and making him one of those higher paid quarterbacks, whereas that is not what we're hearing from Miami. In fact, they're, giving money to Tyreek Hill, they're extending Jalen Waddle, they're doing all these things, but not really anything around Tua Tagovailoa. And it started, 2 seasons ago when he had all those concussions, and they were talking about even, taking the 5th-year option if that was even going to be something worthwhile. And that's, of course, what they have ended up doing. Tua Tagovailoa is not paid well. He is currently under that 5th-year option. And in case you're wondering, that actually makes him the 19th highest paid quarterback with a $23 million, season. That is right behind Geno Smith, but $10 million more than Jordan Love as he's still on his rookie deal. In fact, this $23 million, this 5th-year option would make him the lowest paid quarterback not on their 4-year rookie deal. That's basically how bad it is. Tua Tagovailoa is definitely worth more than $23 million, especially with the way the quarterback market is going. And that's where these frustrations lie. Tua Tagovailoa does deserve a bit of a bigger contract. He's coming off one of his best seasons. And the beautiful thing about it is he kind of laid to rest those injury concerns, at least for one season, right? This was his first fully healthy season. And I would say that the bonus of that was the fact that he spent all of last offseason working on ways to help not get injured, right? He took jiu-jitsu classes to learn how to fall better. He added some weight. So he was able to, soak up some of the hits a little bit better. And he didn't have any concussions. And we saw it, right? It worked. He threw for 4,600 yards. He had almost 30 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill was on pace for 2,000 receiving yards, right? It was incredible, incredible season. And yet the Miami Dolphins are still not sold. And it's very, very questionable why. Reports came out yesterday that the Miami Dolphins are not close in their negotiations with a contract extension for Tua Tagovailoa. In fact, it has been reported that they are not willing to offer a contract anywhere near or similar to the Jared Goff or Trevor Lawrence contracts from this offseason. Darlington of ESPN, Jeff Darlington, said, right now the Dolphins are not offering the contract that is the market value. We're not to a panic point just yet. I just think my optimism earlier has to be slightly scaled back at this point. Based on my conversations, they are not in the Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence ballpark. I've long been optimistic about Tua Tagovailoa getting this deal done, and I'm not saying that it won't get done because these things generally happen, but right now there's 5 words that are looming over the contract negotiations, and they're the words that came out of Tua's mouth. The market is the market. Darlington went on to predict that the Green Bay Packers will sign Jordan Love to an extension before Tua, and that would be Goff-like money for Jordan Love, which would, of course, further complicate the Tua situation. He did, of course, end this whole interview thing with just saying the key word here is that they are negotiations, and we all know, we've all been through them, that negotiations can't change within a minute. But either way, the way things are right now, Tua Tagovailoa is not being offered that nearly $50 million a year, and probably won't be, as the Miami Dolphins are concerned about something. And there's a few ways to look into this. One, it of course could be the injury concerns. 2, it could be like a San Francisco 49ers situation with Brandon Aiyuk, right? Where it's like, oh, well, is Tua actually that good of a quarterback? Or is it Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle making, with all the yak and just making him look more efficient than he actually is? That's what the Dolphins front office is asking themselves as well. So there's just those two things kind of playing negatively for Tua. But I mean, I think that he's a good quarterback. We saw it last year as one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the league. We saw him have the MVP caliber season and was up for the running and everything. And yet it's still not enough for the Dolphins. So I would just be concerned if I own Tua in Dynasty. But also at the same vein, be buying Tua Tagovailoa in Dynasty at the right price, because it does seem that a extension will come at some point. It just might get worse and worse and worse before something actually happens. So I guess I would say maybe wait to swoop in for Tua. Maybe wait for that Jordan Love extension to come in where all the question marks again surround Tua. Like, oh my God, even Jordan Love is extending before him. What's going on? That's maybe the right buying window, but I still think that he will get an extension, even if it's not a lot of money. The thing that I watched this whole ESPN segment, and Dan Orlovsky, he had a really good bit on this. Oh, no, it was Ryan Clark. Sorry. Ryan Clark said that basically, he wants players to get paid and everything. Like, he understands that he's a former player himself, yada, yada, yada. But also at some point, just because the market is being set at a certain point doesn't mean that franchises have to keep beating that market or even coming close to it. Like, the Dolphins could simply still offer Tua a buttload of money, but maybe not the $50 million a year. Like, they could still view Tua as a top 10 quarterback, but not a top 3 quarterback when it comes to the salary. And that's fine and probably reasonable. And so we'll see how it plays out. I still think Tua's going to get an extension. It just sounds like it's not going to be top of the market, which is fine. It's more so going to have to come down to Tua. Is he okay not being paid top of the market? Is he okay being paid, somewhere closer to the top or somewhere in between the top and the middle, right? Like, he's still a very good quarterback, but I agree. He's not a Joe Burrow. He's not a Trevor Lawrence, right? He is still Tua Tagovailoa, which is a very good, probably top 12 quarterback, at least in terms of how he should be paid. It's just, the Dolphins have a lot of things to pay. They've got to pay Jalen Waddle. Well, they just paid Jalen Waddle. They've got to renegotiate Tyreek Hill's contract. Their defense kind of needs to figure out a bunch of stuff as well. So I don't know. But either way, this is his 5th-year option. I doubt Tua wants to continue playing on the 5th-year option. I guarantee it. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets a little bit pettier as the offseason goes on. Maybe he skips some of the real training camp practices or something. But either way, I do expect some sort of closure for this, if you will. So I would say don't panic quite yet. I would get a little worried, of course. I mean, like, it's never good to hear that your player's team in Dynasty doesn't believe them to be at the top of the market, but I'm sure that they still believe him to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. They just don't want to match the market, and that's fine. This is a business at the end of the day. So either way, I would say there's going to be a buying window soon. I think another quarterback, after they sign their extension, it's going to get a lot more murky around the Tua thing, and people are going to start panicking like, oh my God, the Dolphins still haven't signed Tua. That's when you can swoop in. I still think he will sign something. Right now, just press the hold button and see what happens. Maybe, and Ryan makes a good point. Maybe they could offer him a lot of money with less guarantees or something. I think that might be the issue. I think maybe Tua wants guarantees and the Dolphins don't want guarantees because of those injury concerns. But either way, I don't know, right? I have no insider information. We'll find out. And I'm certain that we'll have even more updates on this situation, but it's definitely something interesting to monitor, as he is one of the more important dynasty quarterbacks in Superflex right now on one of the more high-powered offenses. So it's, of course, going to, raise some eyebrows to see what happens. Because, I mean, hey, if Tua's gone, then what do we say about Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill as well? It's very, very confusing, but he's going to be there, at least this season, and I think he'll probably sign an extension as well. It just won't be, $50 million a year. It might be closer to 40, which is still, that's just so much money. I'm sure it'll be fine for Tua and his family. So that is everything I have for you guys. I'm going to pop into the chat here, see if we have any questions. Derek says that because Tua can't play in the cold, maybe plays into it. That is possible. Going into the playoffs, headed up north or something could be interesting. Paul says, any concern for Evan Hull? You saw an update that Trey Sermon is the RB2. I don't really care about depth charts in June, to be completely honest with you. I do think that Trey Sermon is more of the one-for-one replacement for Jonathan Taylor if he goes down. But, that doesn't really mean anything. Evan Hull's the pass catcher. Trey Sermon is not a pass-catching running back. So even if he's RB3, he's still probably going to get some work, and it'll probably be fine. There's also the weird thing. I'm not sure if it applies to running backs as well, but there is something to where your third string has to be on the active roster, whereas your second string doesn't, at least as a quarterback. There was something weird. You guys remember with the Patriots last year, how they moved, it was Matt Corral to second string and put or Bailey Zappi was practice squad or something. It was a weird thing, but ended up being it was just a weird 4D chess roster thing, where, really the third string quarterback is the second string. It was a whole thing. But either way, I'm not going to overreact to depth charts in June. We haven't even had real training camp yet. We'll see what happens at closer to August is more when I actually care about these depth charts. But yeah, no way Miami doesn't sign Tua. I agree. I really think that they will come to something. It's just not going to be top of the market. Here we go. We got a hot take from Uncle Ted. Says Rico Dowd will be this year's 2022 Pollard. That's a hot one. I am not going to agree there, but I will say it's a hot one, and I'll give you your platform, as it's fun to take some hot takes. But I do not think I don't think that the Dallas Cowboys run game is going to be as explosive as it was in 2022. I think it'll be fine, but I think it's just more so going to be CeeDee Lamb than anyone kind of breaking out or anything like that. But that should do it. This was today's episode, and you guys were a very fun audience. Make sure to follow me on social media at JFootballWine, wherever you get it. You can also follow Player Profiler wherever you get your social media as well, at Roto Underworld or at Player Profiler, depending on the platform. So go find those. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button for both the regular Player Profiler channel and the Player Profiler News YouTube channel. Great content coming out daily. You guys all have a terrific Thursday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.